Hello Internet, and welcome to Ramblings of a Madman. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Sean and Stuart for a shallow and probably uninformed dive into the world of unexplained mysteries, conspiracy theories, and the supernatural. Hello, how are we doing today?
It's warm. Well, it was.
It's warm.
It's warm for
It has been really warm.
Anyway.
Yeah, it was much colder today, though, here.
Let's not do weather talk.
Let's not do weather talk.
No, we've ruined it already. Everyone's already left.
We might be out of the lockdown. That's what matters.
Hopefully.
So-
Well, we're almost there. We can see the light, maybe, until there's another disaster and we all have to hide in our homes again.
You can see the light of the mushroom cloud growing in the distance.
Yes.
No. That's just the 25th strain. It's fine. Anyway.
So, yeah, I'll now do a smooth transition to the bit where I advertise the show really badly every time.
May the shilling commence.
So if you've happened to stumble upon this podcast, hello. We do stuff here and we talk into your ears.
We don't bite.
I mean, maybe sometimes. But we've got loads of other episodes, so if you are enjoying this one, maybe go back and have a listen to one of our other topics. They're all very interesting.
You be counting 5.
You be counting 5, good one. And also, if you like what we do here, it would be great if you could leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. It will really help out the show, and it'll help us advertise to more potential listeners. And I am done with the shilling.
Do you feel
Today,
bad?
I don't. I've grown accustomed to it. I'm used to it.
It's like a warm blanket.
I don't feel quite right unless I've shilled to people on the internet.
It's like getting the shakes. Right. What have you got for us then?
I have brought a riveting mystery, as always. This one comes from Brazil, South America. Ooh. And I was thinking this morning that with this topic, we've done every continent on Earth besides Antarctica.
Oh yeah, we have,
stories.
Yeah.
Because we did Asia, we did dragons,
like dragons
in Asia. Yeah. And we've done we did a lot in Europe and a lot in America. Yeah. And we did...
Africa?
Pyramids.
Pyramids, yeah. But also the Atlantis one touched on.
It did touch on it, yeah. Which one was Australia?
Tanam Shud.
Tanam Shud, that was it. It's like the one with the beach. I couldn't remember.
the one on the beach. So if you're out there listening and you know of a mystery in Antarctica, we'd love to hear it, so then we can complete the trifecta, or the seven factor of continents.
The way you complete the trifecta, the trifecta that has absolutely nothing to do with 3.
The seven factor. There we go.
The seven factor.
Fixed it. So I will jump right into it. On Saturday, 20th of August, 1966, an 18-year-old called Jorge da Costa Alves was out with his friends on the outskirts of the city of Niterói near Rio de Janeiro. Flying kites on a hill, then known as the Morro de Vintum, Jorge came across the corpses of 2 men lying side by side. The boys alerted the police, who investigated the scene in the early morning of Sunday the 21st. The men were identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, 2 electronic technicians who lived in the city of Campos, around 200 kilometres away. The bodies, already fairly decomposed, were lying on their backs on a bed of palm tree leaves, looking up at the sky with their hands behind their necks. So they were pretty much like chilling on these palm tree leaves.
Classic on the beach vibe.
Yeah, except dead.
They're dead, yeah. Did they have a straw hat on?
No, they didn't.
One thing I do want to say, given your track record, a lot of those pronunciations were actually quite good.
I know, I practiced before.
I was going to say, how do you say this?
I typed them into Google, and there's like loads of YouTube videos of how to pronounce Portuguese
Jorge
names.
And Pereira.
So, I know.
And Miguel.
That's not what I said.
So they weren't wearing straw hats, but they were neatly dressed, and they wore brand new raincoats over their suits. Miguel was found to have 157,000 Cruzeiro on him, and Manuel had 4,000 Cruzeiro. These are kind of difficult to convert nowadays because there was insane inflation going on at the time. Mm-hmm. I did put them in converters, and 157,000 is about £7.50 according to the internet. Okay. So not much money on them. But however, the strangest thing about the scene was that they were both wearing lead masks over their eyes, like visors. So if you imagine like a mask you'd wear to sleep, except it was made from lead.
Mad. So not like... So in my head, I was thinking like a welding visor then.
No.
But you mean like a proper eye mask?
Just over the eyes, yeah, like a sleeping eye mask.
Made of lead?
Lead?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, also found at the scene were a handkerchief bearing the initials MAS, an empty mineral water bottle, and a notepad. Written on the pad was a list of electronic materials and spare parts, along with simple electronic formulae. This wasn't out of the ordinary for electronic technicians, but what was strange was this list of instructions. So listen carefully to this. Sunday, 1 tablet after a meal. Monday, 1 tablet in the morning on an empty stomach. Tuesday, 1 tablet after a meal. Wednesday, 1 tablet before bedtime. Be at the arranged place at 16:30. Take capsules at 18:30. After feeling the effects, protect half the face with lead masks. Await the agreed signal.
What?
What? What is this?
Wait, so the tablets are completely random, but yet when they take the tablets, they have to wear a lead face mask. Does it make you scratch your eyeballs out or something?
So, wait, when you said you said tablets first, and then you said capsules.
Before I get too far into this story, there aren't very many English sources for it, so a lot of them are translated from Portuguese multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the translations are a bit dodgy.
Okay. Well, basically, tablet or capsule could...
Tablet or capsule.
They could have two very different meanings. Because like a tablet...
I don't think in 1966 someone was eating an iPad, Sean.
Oh, were you thinking tablet like an electronic tablet?
No. But now I've missed a very good pun.
I'll edit it in. Go for it.
What, they were eating iPads? Oh.
No, I won't edit it.
No, don't edit that. No, I mean, like, a capsule could be very... That, to me, is like... The way that it's been written, you'd take like a poison capsule.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It would be more... I think I'm reading too much into the translation, like you said.
Maybe. I mean, I take capsules as medicine, and they're not poison. So
that's what I mean. You can get medicine that is both. I get the difference, but like, I think I'm reading too much into it.
It's completely random timing, so isn't it? It's just weird. I'm trying to think if there are any other medicines that you take that staggered, because it sounded to me like you said
it's not medicine.
Well, maybe it's not. Yeah, that's true. I suppose Alex will probably tell us more. But so they sound like they're at almost like a day and a half intervals.
Yeah, so this seems to be spanning a week, it looks like. Mm-hmm. And one's each day, and they seem to be at different times of the day.
Were the actual medicine, or were the actual capsules, tablets, were they actually there, or was it just the instructions for them?
Just the instructions written on this notepad.
Right.
And both of them had lead masks?
Yes. They were either on their faces still, or they were next to them. Right. It depends on the source that you read.
It can't be medicine. It's got to be some kind of like psychoactive drug or some kind of Heaven's Gate thing.
Are you saying these are crazy people, Sean?
No, I'm saying the people that give them the medicine are crazy.
Oh, okay. So against their will, you're thinking?
Or just they've been roped in.
Mm-hmm.
The Heaven's Gate thing
mysterious cult.
Like a cult that was very mysterious and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Or was it? What was the other one? Johnstown? Basically same sort of thing, like a suicide pact cult thing.
Yep.
I'm completely off with that, I think. I'll have to look it up later. But that's the vibe I'm getting. It's not medicine. If they're both being told to take it, or, you know, they've both taken it, it doesn't feel like they're fixing anything.
Yeah.
Or maybe there is something they're trying to fix. Ooh, I don't know.
Ooh, the mystery deepens.
Or it's an anti-radiation tablet, and that's why they're wearing lead goggles.
So I was thinking that, but why would they... Why
radiation
goggles?
Sickness medicine? I don't know. In my head, so Alex is saying face mask. For some reason, in my head, I'm thinking of
eye mask.
Goggles.
It's literally
eye mask. Sorry, eye mask. Sorry, not face mask. I'm thinking of like goggles.
Do you want a picture?
Yeah, go on.
I was going to get to it later on, but I'll give it to you.
Oh, you can come back to it. I don't mind.
No, I think it'll be
Actually,
easier.
no, I think this matters because
for this
were
situation.
they like homemade, or can you actually buy lead eye masks?
They were homemade,
Right, okay.
very crudely.
Okay.
Very crudely, okay.
Yeah,
so I'm glad I
it's
asked
in the
that question.
Discord chat for you.
Did they have frames? Or were they literally just
They
resting
didn't.
on their face?
They were resting on the faces.
Yeah, so that's just telling me there's something really wrong. Because if you could buy like real, either mass-produced or specialist lead eye masks for whatever reason, that would give some kind of meaning and purpose to them having it.
Yeah.
But the fact that they look crudely made as well.
Okay, do you want me to move on?
Yeah.
Please.
So, if we talk about the handwriting, as we love to do on this show, it's kind of mixed. Some sources say that the handwriting didn't match either of the victims, while some other sources say that it matched Miguel's handwriting. In this case, however, although the handwriting matched, they say that the construction of sentences doesn't fit with how Miguel spoke, so it's hypothesized that the instructions were either copied or dictated to Miguel.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be someone else's idea that he's written down, if it is his writing. We'll move on to the autopsy. As usual with these mysterious deaths, the autopsy was a complete joke and a mess. Along with the advanced state of decomposition that the bodies were in, the forensic office in Niterói was overworked and the mortuaries were full. For these reasons, they couldn't carry out an in-depth examination because the cold rooms necessary to preserve the bodies weren't available. Anyway, they didn't find any signs of trauma or burns that could have resulted in death, and analysing the internal organs showed no traces of poisoning. So the cause of death was therefore ruled as cardiac arrest due to unknown causes.
Interesting.
So we don't know what killed them. It might be because it's not evident anymore because of the decomposition, or it might just be because they did a bad job.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were hiding something.
Or they were hiding something. Dum dum dum. So the police did some investigating, and they kind of came up with a timeline for the week that the men did. So, in the morning of 17th of August 1966, the two men boarded a bus that would take them from Campos to Niterói. According to both of their families, they were going to stock up on electronic equipment as well as buy a cheaper used car. They took 3 million Cruzeiros with them, which was a lot more than what they were found with. That's like a couple £100 from my attempt at trying to...
Yeah, and they were found with a couple 100,000, right?
Yeah, they were found with like £8, and they took a couple hundred.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of theirs, called Elcio Gomez, claimed that he accompanied them to the station that morning. When they reached the entrance, the two men insisted that he not accompany them inside. Gomez told the police he thought they were going to Sao Paulo instead of Rio de Janeiro. Around 2:30, they arrived in Niterói and went to an electronics store that they were frequent customers at. They didn't buy anything or make any orders. Witnesses then claimed they went into a clothing store and came out with 2 identical raincoats. At around 4:35, the two were seen in a bar, where Miguel bought a bottle of water. The bartender claims that Miguel appeared very nervous and was constantly checking his watch. Miguel kept the receipt for the water in order to get back some money if he returned the empty bottle. This is significant because it makes it less likely that he had planned suicide. Because, I mean, you're not going to kill yourself if you get that couple of Cruzeiros back, right? The next morning, Thursday 18th of August, a boy named Paulo dos Santos was on the Morro de Vintum Hill sparrow hunting when he came across the bodies. He alerted policeman Antonio Guerrera, who was patrolling the area. As we know, the scene wasn't investigated until 2 days later, so apparently Antonio didn't bother to verify the report. This was investigated subsequently to determine whether the policeman had robbed the corpses. No evidence, however, was found of this, and Antonio was therefore charged with the delay of 2 days in the discovery of the bodies. Then, as we know, the bodies were found the next day by a different boy, and the authorities searched the scene.
Okay, so just a bit of a recap of that timeline. So when did they get found again? What day?
They were found on Saturday the 20th of August.
And when did they set off for their journey, but when the timeline started?
The 17th.
So 3 days between them being seen alive and dead, but to have had such advanced decomposition. But did you say August?
August, yeah.
So it's pretty warm,
Brazil.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
In Brazil. It's going to be pretty hot.
They were found on the 18th, so the next day after the 17th, dead.
Oh.
So they died within a day of leaving Campos.
Mm-hmm.
But the police officer either found the bodies and didn't tell anyone and robbed them, or he didn't bother to look for the bodies, didn't believe the kid. So then they were out on this hill for the next 2 days before they were officially discovered.
Robbing them would line up with the decomp thing, I guess.
They would, but they investigated it, and apparently he didn't rob them. Although I will say I won't say anything about how corrupt the Brazilian police were.
I was going to say, it's definitely not been recorded.
No, definitely not.
No.
In many documentaries.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so the other strange thing was that they told Gomez not to accompany them inside the station, and he thought they were going to Sao Paulo. So it seems like they're trying to keep him off their tail. But yeah, so that's just the general timeline that people say they did.
So it fits quite well with the evidence that we've got at the scene. So we found a plastic water bottle, we found 2 raincoats with evidence that they were freshly bought.
Yep.
The water bottle that you said, the notepad they probably already had with them, and nobody's commented on any lead goggles.
No, they haven't.
That's weird.
Well, we'll move on to the masks now. So they were made from thin sheets of lead cut by hand into the shape of sunglasses, but without the stems. I'll link a picture below in the description for everyone to look at as well. There's like a little photograph, black and white photograph. Investigations revealed that on the 12th of August, a neighbour found the 2 men working with hammers on a lead pipe. When he asked them what they were doing, they said they were working to avoid the end of the world. Dun dun dun. The same evening, Manuel's wife saw them trying the masks on in front of a mirror. When the police searched Miguel's home, they found the remains of a lead pipe, which matched that of the masks. They also found a book that dealt with spiritism and science, in which passages related to intense luminosity, masks, and guiding spirits were highlighted.
Okay.
So maybe we got some crazy people here. We're not quite sure yet. But they made the masks 5 days earlier, the 12th of August, it seems.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely an active intent. This isn't on a whim.
No, this is a planned thing, it seems like.
So working on the lead pipe thing, how long was that before? Sorry.
That was on the 12th, so it was 5 days before they left off. And it was...
So all of that happened 5 days before?
Yes.
Right, okay.
So...
But, sorry, everything... I'm trying to get around my head, like, what sort of... The frame of mind and, like, the... Well, not necessarily the motive, because there's no murder, or maybe there is. Who knows? Indirect murder. But, like, I'm trying to get into
the mind of Miguel and Manuel.
Yeah. So what they were working on, clearly by that point, whatever they were thinking, whatever they were doing, whatever led up to this, had been going on for a bit before.
Yeah, it was premeditated, definitely.
100%, yeah. So was it around that point where they were taking the tablets then, in theory, from watching the...
Well, the notes start on Sunday. So if the 20th was a Saturday, what date would the Sunday be? The
21st. Oh, before, sorry.
The Sunday before. 13th?
Quick maths. Yeah, no, the Sunday would be the 14th.
The 14th. So they made the masks, and then 2 days later they started this tablet routine, leading up to leaving on Thursday for Niterói.
I wonder if the goggles, eye mask, whatever you want to call it, there's 2 ways of thinking about this, isn't there? So there's one that is that you're protecting yourself from an incoming source of bright light, which is what it sounds like that passage that they were discussing.
Are you suggesting they have laser eyes?
Luminosity.
And they're stopping the lasers coming out of their eyes?
It does sound like X-Men, doesn't it?
It does.
So there's the on the one side there's them expecting to have intense luminosity, like welding, for example. But then they're not goggles. They're not seeing through them. Whatever they're putting on their eyes, they're shielding their eyes or impairing their vision.
Yep.
So the other thing I'm wondering is whether or not they were using them because of light sensitivity. So, for example, the weird thing, I don't know how this has come up through my brain, but the reason pirates wore eye patches was so that one eye was accustomed to the dark and one eye was accustomed to the light. So when they go below deck, it's dark.
Citation needed.
They lift the eye patch up and then it's bright because their eyes
That's genius.
And they're ready to swashbuckle.
and they're ready to swashbuckle, indeed. So I wonder whether
How
or not...
did I never know that?
Mad, isn't it?
Like,
I mean, it might not be true,
legit.
Sean.
It's definitely legit.
It might be an urban legend, we're not sure.
It might be an urban legend, but either way, it's
it makes sense.
sweet.
It makes sense why, because like I just thought pirates, the majority of pirates who wore eye patches just didn't have an eye
skewered
or
eyeballs.
They were just disabled.
Whatever. But there are a lot of, you see a lot of people wearing, in documentation, as in Pirates of the Caribbean.
It's a valid source.
No, but like depictions and stuff of pirates, they always have that stereotypical eye patch or whatever, but then they haven't necessarily lost an eye. So that's quite...
Yeah.
Even if it is an urban legend, that still makes
it's still
sense.
Cool, yeah. But moving on from the pirates thing, because this episode is not on pirates. So I'm thinking that they either could have been preparing themselves for the dark, so shielding their eyes to do something at night, so that they could see, or whether or not any medicine that they were taking made their eyes very sensitive to light, so they were wearing something to protect their vision. But why would you just wear a pair of sunglasses?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Why lead eye masks? Why not sunglasses? Why not a cloth? Yeah. Literally, they could have taken like a t-shirt off or put their hands over their eyes. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the hands have to be behind the head, though, so they can be chilling. The sigh is sick of my shit.
Obviously, it happens a lot when we do these, but I'm genuinely at a complete loss. I can't think of any reason. It's a good one, this, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, so I'll move on. At the time, the case didn't get much further than what we discussed. The police did arrest Gomez on the 27th of August on suspicion of being responsible for the 2 deaths due to contradictions in his testimony. I'm not exactly sure what contradictions these were. None of the sources mention them. But since he had an alibi that he was in Campos during the time, they dropped all charges against him. Whilst Gomez was under examination, it came to light that he, along with almost all of the electronic specialists in the area of Campos, were scientific spiritualists, whatever the hell that means. They regularly attended seances and were members of a secret society devoted to spiritism. According to Gomez, Manuel and Miguel were particularly interested in communicating with beings on Mars, and for this they carried out many strange electronic experiments. So, crazy people maybe. Not 100% yet, but maybe?
Crazy people, yes.
Crazy people, yes.
People can believe whatever they want, but this isn't like religion. This is just weird.
It does make you think, though, that it explains possibly why they were sat back looking up at the sky.
Yeah, definitely.
Were they looking at Mars? Yeah.
Because of the laser eyes.
Oh, yeah, they had to put the goggles on so they didn't cut Mars in half with their laser eyes.
Exactly.
The precious Mars. Yeah, but it's weird that, like, every electronic guy in the area is a spiritism, apparently.
It's actually one of the entry requirements to work there.
Yeah, first box you have to tick. Do you believe in spirits?
That is weird that all of them was part of the same thing. But also, if they all know each other, it might have been like a long thing where they've all kind of like built up this belief. You know what I mean?
The other thing to note is, so Alex, you might not have necessarily researched this question, but there's a certain amount of when people experience weird things, or they say weird things, or they have a weird belief, it's whether or not culturally, for the location that they are in or from, whether or not that is the cultural norm. Was it very much normal for people to believe in spirits in Brazil, or was it just these guys that are weird for believing in spirits?
Okay, so I didn't really look into that, but I do know, because one of the sources I used for this story was an article from a UFO magazine, and apparently it was quite taboo to be into UFOs in Brazil during this time.
Okay.
So whether that's related to spiritualism, kind of, it's along the same lines, right?
The only reason I asked that,
maybe.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is because when you think of Latin America, and I think of places like Honduras and places like Haiti, where things like voodoo exist, or people have belief in voodoo and things like that, to talk about spirits there will be normal because that's part of their culture. If people think that spirits are there in Brazil, it makes it a bit more normal that they might be talking about spirits or thinking about spirits.
Yeah,
but obviously that still makes their behaviour, like, not everybody in Brazil walks around wearing lead sunglasses, otherwise they'd all bump into each other.
Fuck's sake.
So while Gomez was being interviewed by police, he was talking about these experiments that the two men were carrying out. One such experiment he witnessed resulted in a violent explosion in Manuel's garden when some of the electronic equipment failed.
Ooh, that might explain the bright light. I'm thinking sparks.
Mm-hmm. They were also associated with another explosion, which occurred on Atafona Beach on the 13th of June 1966. So a couple of months before-ish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Witnesses described the appearance of a luminous object first descending from the sky, but then rising again before generating a blinding flash. The explosion was felt in Campos, which was like 40 kilometres away from this beach.
What?
Mm-hmm. Apparently it was a big explosion.
Yeah,
40 kilometres?
That's mad. I was thinking like a flare at first,
Nope.
but...
Like 26 miles? Like, well, give or take.
Apparently, according to witnesses. On the 16th of September, it was reported that the Brazilian Navy and Air Force were interested in both the Atafona beach explosion and the depths, suggesting there was a link between the two events.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is where the conspiracy comes in. Why are the Navy and Air Force interested in these crazy mask-wearing idiots who died?
Maybe they were jealous of their cool sunglasses.
Or maybe because they set off fucking explosions.
That too.
Maybe they accidentally made a nuke.
An explosion that could be felt 20... I think it's like 24, 25, 26 miles away. That's a lot.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
But it does fit with their preparation for a blinding light.
It does, yeah.
But, to be honest, if you're somebody that comes across as reasonably smart, like, they kind of come across that, if they're doing electronics, and they must be fairly bright, excuse the pun, why wouldn't you just wear the lead pipe as a suit if you're going to let off a nuke? Because they're obviously trying to potentially protecting their eyes from an...
Sorry, what? Wear the lead pipe as a suit?
Well, so they cut out crude goggles from lead pipe.
Yeah, I know you mean. Why would they not
why would they not
like
wear a bigger protector? Yeah. And why would you wear a raincoat?
No. I don't think this is, like, linked. Because what else were they setting off? Like, there was nothing around them that was found to be set off. So unless they set off a rocket and they were, like, waiting for the explosion in the sky, or if there was something miles away that they were just ready to watch and it never actually went off or whatever, because people would probably know about it, there'd be reports of another big explosion. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why...
Unless
doesn't make any sense.
Unless they'd made more of them. Maybe they'd made them before. And when the explosion happened a couple of months before, they were unprepared for the bright light. And then they were thinking again later down the line that they might need to prepare themselves for the brighter light.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, like the fact that we're not talking about the day that they died there was an explosion makes you think that whatever they were planning hasn't happened. Unless just something went wrong with it and they were actually just sat back waiting for the end of the world, like they were saying.
Yeah. So this is the point of the episode where I move on to all the theories and the fun stuff. So do you guys want to kind of chat amongst yourselves and try to figure out what you think before I influence your mind with my theories?
So it comes across to me. So pieces that I can't explain at the moment, I suppose, in terms of what's happened. So the whole tablets, capsules thing, we haven't really touched on that. I'm sure you're going to, but we haven't so far come up with a bright idea of exactly what that's for. The goggles, eye mask, whatever you want to call it, sound like they could well be protecting something from a bright light. Fits with the story that they were saying. And if they've previously had accidents with explosions, it does sound like they're bracing themselves for something explosive that is going to hurt their eyes. In terms of whether or not what they're trying to do is make some sort of electronic explosion to carve a portal for spirits or whatever that they might be thinking, I don't know, but obviously you wonder whether or not there is something behind the spiritual beliefs there. I can't really hypothesize something that links it all together, though, directly. But it is weird that the military are involved.
It is. It's fishy.
My head just keeps going back to the tablets thing. Like, I reckon the tablets or the capsules, whichever they are, whatever the translation is, I reckon it's some kind of... I reckon that is what killed them. Like, definitely.
Yeah.
But maybe it's some kind of mineral or
lead.
Or just some kind of... Well, which would be definitely poisonous. But
that's what I'm wondering.
Maybe
they've taken
lead
tablets, yeah.
Or it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't matter what it is, but like the way I'm imagining it, doesn't matter what it is. Maybe they theorized that it would allow them to do something or see something or protect themselves.
Some sort of lead-based religion where they worship the lead and they take it.
Well, why were they hammering a pipe and saying we're going to save the world?
Because they were trolling their neighbour.
It's not really a conspiracy, it's just a massive troll.
It's an elaborate ruse. No. Maybe. It'd make more sense.
Maybe they had a sense of humour.
Heavy metal poisoning would kill you.
You don't know.
Like, definitively would kill you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so do you want me to influence you with my theories?
Yeah, go on.
My crazy theories? So the first one I've got, which we've talked about quite a bit already, is some sort of overdose on psychedelics due to this sort of spiritism sort of stuff going on. So these guys were into some weird stuff, right? So they might have accidentally died whilst doing some occult experiment, or purposely killed themselves in a ritual suicide similar to Heaven's Gate, which you mentioned before. The use of psychedelic drugs to produce some sort of experience comes to mind. The notes found at the scene also suggest drug use, so perhaps they died from overdoses. The book found at Miguel's house also supports this, and indicates that they wore the masks because they thought the experiment would result in blinding light. In an interview at the time, a notable parapsychologist, there we go, we got experts on, said this was just the case, and that they had died whilst attempting to contact extraterrestrials or spirits. According to this source, light emissions from an unidentified new world were supposed to stimulate the third eye of the participants. Whatever the hell that
So they
means.
cover their two eyes, and their third eye can see.
They prepared to do this by fasting and taking drugs to enter into a trance.
Okay.
So there's some crazy stuff happening. That seems quite likely to me.
Yeah. Although I do want to say
crazy.
that I'm not an expert in paranormal science, but I don't think those guys are experts.
What are you saying? A notable parapsychologist, of which I didn't write his name down because it was really long in Portuguese, is not an expert?
Again, I'm not an expert, but I don't think he's an expert. That feels like the most likely to me. I feel like from the start, it's just whether it was intentional suicide or not. Let's take this thing, let's experiment, let's see if it works. Because they all sound like fanatics. They're all part of this. Effectively, it's a cult or religion,
yeah, it seems like,
whatever.
It?
There's a fine line, right?
It's ironic to say, but it's pretty down to earth, that theory. Like, it fits with all the points. Right.
I can't think of any gaps with that.
No. So the second one I've got is something we're well versed in now, after the last episode, and that's UFOs. So on the 25th of August, papers released testimony from a Mrs. Gracinda de Sousa, who was a well-regarded society lady. So, like, social class was quite a big thing during this time in Brazil, so this is like a well-regarded person. Her story goes that on the evening of the 17th of August, so the day they left, she was driving with her 3 children when they saw an unusual object flying over the Morro de Vinton. She describes it as an oval-shaped object of orangey colour with a band of fire around its edges. It was hanging over the top of the hill and sending rays out in all directions. Which, again, is pretty much how I described the UFO in Rendlesham. It's quite strange.
Yeah, it's very similar, isn't it?
And it's what I said as well. UFO descriptions tend to be very similar throughout time.
Almost like they're real.
Yeah, whether that makes it more valid or not, I don't know. She stopped the car and watched the object for 3 to 4 minutes as it rose and fell vertically several times. When she arrived home, she told her husband about the object. He quickly drove out to the area but didn't see anything. The news that someone as prominent as Senora de Sousa had revealed this information prompted several other people to contact the police and confirm the sighting. That's sort of like unconfirmed, but apparently a load of people then got involved and were like, yeah, we also saw a strange thing on the 17th.
Jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Whether it's just people who want to be involved in the story or what, we don't know, but maybe it makes it more valid.
What you said about there's a consistency between like descriptions of UFOs. That for me is very similar to like just the alien description thing. I think we mentioned in the Rendlesham one actually, where depictions of aliens having like elongated head or like, you know, deformed heads, that kind of thing, they're all the same description. Maybe because around about in like 1960s, that's when, you know, in creative media, it would have been a lot of sci-fi stuff starting to come out. So people would have seen media's depictions of that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's just how aliens are perceived in society.
Exactly.
As this is what they look like.
I was going to say, there's definitely some merit to the rising profile of psychoactive drugs and people that look humanoid, and whether or not they're people just hallucinating humans in an elongated form and seeing aliens. You wonder whether or not the same... It's difficult to extrapolate that to seeing something in the sky, though, like in this case. You might be right, like it might just be a case of jumping on the bandwagon, but you wonder, like, so people might have been backing a high-profile figure up to try and gain some political clout themselves, to be like, oh, well, I had your back when you said this weird thing. Or to get into someone's inner circle from like a trust thing. But the description is odd, and it's hard to know what the alternative would be. So this person that's driving along with their children, hopefully, isn't on psychoactive drugs. So
hopefully not.
What is it that she saw if it's not a UFO?
It was the 60s, though.
You could buy heroin in the pharmacy back then.
Maybe.
Coca-Cola still had cocaine in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in day. I forgot to mention it as well. The assumption with this theory is that they managed to alert the aliens and then the aliens killed them, maybe?
I can't argue against them. I was going to say, well, how did they kill them? But if they're aliens, they might not have...
Science.
Yeah.
Sci-fi technology.
They might not have anything that we would be able to measure, but it's still bullshit. But the one theory I want to add to that is, what if they saw something that the cult as a whole or the two lads put in the sky?
Yeah, maybe. This might have been the rocket that they sent off to make an explosion.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
they were testing
maybe these alleged laser things
thing.
are just parts of the rocket breaking up.
Or it could have just been a meteor, which was breaking up.
It could just be a meteor.
Yeah, but you said the description was that over the hill it moved up and down. It's not like it fell to Earth. It was moving up and down.
Yeah, but that'll be the drugs. Or maybe the road that they were driving on.
The suspension was really bad back then. Oh, I love that. That's great. That's a great explanation.
Exactly. I don't know where to go from that.
I mean, I can't argue with that, and I have no idea how to follow that. So
exactly, I got an answer for everything.
So we'll get a bit more grounded, a bit more down to earth now with the next one. So how about ball lightning? Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Not sure.
But please explain it, because it's cool.
So it's an unexplained phenomenon which involves luminescent spherical concentrations of lightning which last longer than the flashing of regular lightning bolts. So it's basically a ball of lightning which sticks around in the sky for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if this happens, it can kill people quite easily because it's lightning, and lightning's scary. There are a number of factors which point to this conclusion. It was raining on the day, as evidenced by the raincoats. The men had stupidly worn metal masks on an open hill, and also witnesses say they had seen globes of light near the hill around the time that the men had died.
Okay.
Now, whether those globes of light were the UFO or ball lightning, we're not sure. But
fuck's sake. I was going to say, well, they are electricians, but they're not meteorologists.
Are you suggesting they created the ball lightning?
That makes me sound more intelligent, yeah. That's exactly what I suggested.
They harness the power of
Not
of
the
nature
well, they're
and
electricians, so they
science.
must know exactly how lightning works, which in theory they would as well. But being able to predict a thunderstorm, I didn't. Electrical engineers, it's not the same field, is it? But then,
So they predicted the thunderstorm and they purposely went out into it to die?
there was no burn marks.
There wasn't. I was about to say that.
Yeah.
So the burning caused by the lightning would have been obvious in the autopsy, even after decomposition had set
I
in.
think it would have been obvious before the autopsy.
I mean, to the untrained eye.
No,
not.
like fried chicken, like crispy.
It would have smelled amazing.
Oh, nah. Well, no. I'm exaggerating that, but Stu, like, if you get hit by lightning and it kills you, surely without an autopsy it'd be obvious.
No, but if you've been
Presumably.
decomposing for 3 days, it might not be as
The
obvious.
thing is, they were wearing clothes, so the clothes would have shown scorch marks, even if their flesh didn't.
Yeah.
There we go. This is why we pay you the big bucks.
Well, this is why someone pays you the big bucks. But
Yeah. It's a bit weird though, still as an idea, because if it's okay, so essentially what we're suggesting is that they've gone out, they've bought a raincoat because they know it's going to rain. They've bought a bottle of water that they know that they're going to come back to because the whole plan is that they're not planning to die. They go to this hill. They happen to lie flat on the ground looking up at the sky as it's raining directly into their face in a very relaxed position, and then they somehow die, but with no evidence of them dying from lightning. Could they have just died of cold exposure?
No.
It's August though, isn't it? Like, the rain would be warm.
For both of them to die lying in the same position.
Yeah, because when we did Dyatlov, hypothermia makes people wacky, doesn't it?
It does. And urticantly as well.
Yeah.
It just... No.
So how did they die then?
The poison or
Aliens.
whatever tablet they took.
But with no symptoms.
Let me... It makes sense. It makes sense because they had clear instructions on when to take the tablets for the last week. It would make sense that they would both die at similar or the same time. If they were following the same routine with the same poison, took the tablets exactly the same time, the same with like hypothermia or cold exposure, whatever, they would probably die at slightly different times. But if they were dying from cold exposure or heat exposure, whatever, surely one of them, especially if it was accidental, one of them surely would have noticed, or they wouldn't just be lying in the same position. The fact that they're lying in the same position with the same masks on, obviously the different conflicting reports, they might not have been wearing them, they might have been at the side, whatever, but same position, with their hands behind their heads, with the same schedule to take the same medication or poison, whatever, that has to be... The cause of death can't be anything else.
But to die at the same time, like, yes, okay, I fully get that if you take a poison, it's poisoned you. But Sean, if me and you both took the same poison, we're different builds.
I agree.
We would die at different times. To die exactly next to each other after a week of building up to some poison, taking one tablet, capsule, or whatever you want to call it, a time, that's very predictable. Why wouldn't they have...
Let's say I'm more thinking of how they died, not so much the exact same time they died. So if it's cold exposure or something like that, I just feel like I'm leaning more towards it being intentional. Because if one of them got wind that the other was dying or dead, the other might have done something about it. If it was like, oh shit, hang on, this isn't meant to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they're both lying there, imagine they're both lying there, one of them starts to pass away, violently or otherwise, just lying there, starts to pass away. They might have been talking to each other, something like that. He then talks to the other guy, doesn't respond. He goes, okay, he's passed away now. I'll wait for my time. And then stays in the same position. Does that make sense?
It
the
does.
way I'm trying to visualize it.
Yeah, it definitely does. And there are certain ways to die that involve you going into a comatose state before you actually die.
Mm-hmm.
So if they both went into a comatose state, neither of them could prevent each other from dying. But the onset has been
what if it was
similar.
different tablets as well? What if it was different poison? What if it was whatever? So they were taking like, I imagine it maybe to be like this. Is it tracer fluid that you have before a operation or scan or whatever? I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, what, like the iodine stuff? Do you mean?
Yeah, what's it called? Like you either drink it or you inject it or
contrast.
whatever. And it shows contrast fluid. That's the one. So that kind of thing. Maybe it's that sort of thing to build, like something to build up an immunity or something. And then the way that I remember the note reading at the end was slightly different. So it said, make sure you take these tablets before you turn up. What if they were different tablets? What if it was a different kind of poison, like sleeping tablets or something that would put them into like that comatose state, and then they just fell asleep for like 5 hours, and during those 5 hours, the poison finally killed them, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a 2-day window where they're on this hill that they could have died in.
Yeah, where no one saw them before that either.
I just feel like to say somebody's died of a very specific substance that hasn't been detected at an autopsy is reasonably bold. Admittedly, they might not have cared. It might just have been in the 60s, particularly, that there weren't many pathologists, people died.
Would they have tested for every single thing?
Well, this is what I'm thinking. I'm wondering whether or not it's a case of somebody's died, the only reason that they did an autopsy was to make sure they didn't have a bullet wound. Because it's reasonably fair to say, well, as long as there doesn't look like foul play, we won't assume that there's a crime being committed. Although they did then arrest the third guy.
Gomez, yeah.
So there must have been something that seemed dodgy for him to have had an arrest.
Yeah, all they say is there was discrepancies in his interview or whatever he did. I'm not sure what that means, whether he said different dates, different times and stuff like that in the different interviews.
It's just bizarre to think, I don't know, I keep kind of going back to it. It may just be the way that Alex has said it at the start, which is what I'm clinging on to, but the whole, why would you keep a receipt for a water bottle so you can return it if you have no plan on dying?
Yeah, no, true.
But then again, like, you might be right. It might be that they've been given a substance of which they don't know the side effects, which is actually going to be a slow, painful death. And then they've taken some medicine at a specific time so that they don't suffer this painful death because they've had a sleeping tablet or something, and actually they just die in their sleep of something that they've been taking for a week. But it's the final thing that actually means that the actual tablet that they take on the day to prepare for the end is the tablet that they're taking just to knock them out through the symptoms. So therefore, as soon as they've both taken it, they're both knocked out, but the poison's killing them in the background.
Well, but also that just popped into my head then is that it might have been two separate, not necessarily harmless things, but there are medication that you shouldn't take together, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But like, what about if it's the same in this case? What if there was actually two genuinely harmless substances or purposeful substances, but harmless in terms of they wouldn't kill them, but then there was no evidence or testing at the time to say that it would have reacted badly together in the human body?
True.
Maybe there's that. Like, I'm thinking it would be You are right. I'm going back on what I said about it being intentional. I do agree. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's completely accidental. But it has to be the tablets. And
it's misadventure,
I'll hold
isn't
my hands up.
So they've intentionally done this act, but the intent of actually dying from the act seems as if it wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah.
I will just say, though, we've done quite a few of these mysterious death stories now. And how often in the autopsy do they find poison?
Well, yeah.
0%.
Yeah.
And often poison is like our answer. So
yeah, that's a fact.
Just putting that out there.
But oh yeah, true. I can't argue with that. I was going to say, but there's always been evidence that there's poison, but then
has there?
Yeah.
The evidence for poison is usually that it just makes sense that there's poison because there seems to be no other cause of death. So how about if they were murdered and then robbed? Really, the only evidence for this is that they didn't have as much money as what they left with. and they didn't seem to really buy anything on the trip.
The coats, though.
Coats wouldn't cost, what, almost 3 million cruzeros?
About 100 quid or something.
How did they travel?
They travelled by... It says station. I think it must have been a train, right?
I wonder how much a train ticket would have been. Like, is there a reasonable expenditure?
I don't know, but it seems a lot of money to spend on a train ticket.
But is it a lot of money to have in the first place? That's the other question.
Like I say, it's hard to convert it.
That's because what I'm thinking is that. So is it the equivalent of, I don't know, me leaving home with £10,000 in my pocket, which is obviously a lot of money?
No, I think it's the equivalent of like £500.
So I suppose
which is still quite a large amount of money to have.
I suppose it's really hard. The finances are really pedantic, isn't it?
And that really makes a difference as well, because 500 quid in the 60s would be a lot more than it is now.
Basically, it's enough money to buy a small used car.
Okay.
Okay, fair
So, like, if they want to like buy a small Beetle or whatever,
cars
fair
enough.
In the 60s,
which also at that time might have been cheaper in Brazil as well.
Of course, yeah, it would definitely be cheaper. Regarding the money, though, it's just as likely that the money was stolen by the first policeman, or even by passers-by at some point in the 2 days the corpses were on the hill.
Or even the kid.
It could be a kid, it could just be random people who didn't report it. Or crows, many crows.
Or magpies, they do like
magpies. Do they have magpies in Brazil? I'm not sure if they do.
Well, they probably have Brazilian magpies, Alex.
Brazilian magpies. They speak Portuguese and have long moustaches. We do have a witness, however. There is a single witness who claims he saw the two with an unknown man before they died.
Ooh.
In 1968, so a couple years after, a story came out in the press that a witness had seen a blonde man sitting at the wheel of a jeep and conversing with Miguel and Manuel on the road up the Morro de Vintim on the day before the bodies were found. So we have a unsubstantiated report that a, quote, blonde man, so presumably not a South American, talked to them for a bit. So maybe he killed them for reasons.
Maybe he was part of it, yeah, but then they also went to quite a few places, it sounds like, on that same day.
They had a list of places to
go. They went to a bar, they went to blah, blah, blah. The chances are that someone drove past asking for directions.
Yeah.
If he was blonde, he might not have been from the area.
Yeah.
Tourist or whatever. So it might have relevance, but there's nothing to say that it's relevant. We could talk loads about how he was fucking part of the military, the FBI, or like he was the head of the cult, but there's nothing.
It's also weird that it's taken 2 years for somebody to come out and say that.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if it was prominent, surely at the time they'd have done it. It almost sounds like somebody's come across this story again and said, oh yeah, this happened.
Yeah, it'd be like us now going to Brazil and being like, well, actually, before I was even born,
I think you'll find that actually...
I've lost my hair now, but I was that blonde man.
I was so blonde back in day.
Yeah.
It was glorious. I know what you're thinking, though. Man, this story is really strange. Surely there couldn't have been a similar case which happened a couple of years before, right? But there you'd be wrong, because in 1962, the body of a radio and TV technician called Hermes Luis Feitosa was found in the same area. Just like this case, there was no apparent cause of death, and a similar lead mask was found next to the body. Okay. Investigations revealed that he had gone with the intent of experimenting alleged psychic skills that allowed him to pick up radio signals with the aid of his mind. So maybe copycat suicide? Or an accidental death trying to do a similar experiment? Question mark?
Same cult. Yeah. Same... What was
same cult, different time.
What was the word you used? The... scientific spiritualists or whatever.
Scientific spiritism.
Scientific spiritism. He's also a radio technician.
He is.
Same similar-ish sort of field. Potentially been able to use the same sort of equipment. I reckon it's linked. It's too similar to...
It's got to be linked, right?
Yeah, has to be. Even if he's done this and passed on some findings before he died or whatever, and then this other group of scientific spiritualists found it and copied
passed on some knowledge.
Right, where was
his death rattle?
Where was it in comparison?
It was in a similar area on a different hill, I believe.
Like, locally?
Yeah, the same. Yeah. Imagine like the same region, but a different hill in the area.
That does and doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Because I don't know about yourself, Alex, but me and Stu are in agreement that it was accidental or misadventure. Why would they repeat something that also killed someone?
Although I suppose, is it, had they thought they'd fine-tuned it by then, 2 years later?
They got cocky.
Well, yeah, but you've got in between that, in the interim to that, there might have been lots of successful experiences.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe those are the only 3 that actually passed away from it.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
The first one, they didn't know about, even though if we know about it, they probably knew about it. If that makes sense, because it would have been reported, it would have been recorded.
But it might not have been recorded.
Well, we know about it.
But do we know about it because people looked into it after what happened?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think the story was reported, but like not very prominently. But because these deaths got so much press, old stories got dug up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Relating to it.
Okay.
Because there's loads of times where you hear local person dies, and then a little while later it's like, more local people die. Was there something that happened with the first one that could have prevented the death of the second instance? Mm-hmm. And that's why the first one gets revisited, not actually because it had anything dramatic about it at the time. Because the hindsight's the benefiting tool there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's people trying to find links, right?
I guarantee they are linked. I don't think it was someone, like, they were copying a suicide. I don't think they were doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's the thing, like, what if they were all spiritualists? There must be something that they had experienced or found that made them genuinely believe that they could pick up radio waves or something like that.
I mean, must there?
It may have just been a hype
I'm
thing,
not saying it was real, because there was a lot of drugs at the time. But someone somewhere, as like a martyr or whatever, like the head of the religion, preaching and whatever, explaining all of this.
If you do a lot of LSD, you can pick up radio signals with your mind.
There you go.
Make sure you don't die, though. LSD
but that would explain that the whole picking up radio signals, the whole whatever, that makes more sense why they try to use the lead. Because they're trying to pick up the signals with their brain or whatever. They put it over their eyes to protect their eyes.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
But I think that's more...
That sounded completely fine in my head. I don't know what you're laughing at.
I think that's more to do with the whole...
It's just absurd. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with the whole third eye thing, isn't it? So if you completely shield your eyes... So the idea of the lead is that no matter what you do, you can't see anything through your visual eyes... And your third eye to see spirits comes is
you're forced
unblocked.
To use the third eye.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes more sense it doesn't make any sense, but it makes more sense in the context of the fact that you've got people who are looking for spirits. Obviously, the idea is that you can't see them. You need your third eye to see them. What better way to use your third eye than to completely, essentially blind yourselves without blinding yourself beyond just that single instance?
What's it called? Sensory deprivation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My third eye comes to light all the time when I'm in the dark.
Keep it to yourself. So, as the final thing I have in this case, in 1969, the papers printed the official conclusion of the lead mask case. Hamilton Benzani, notorious criminal, smuggler and car thief, already serving a sentence of 50 years, told a female relative of his that he was connected with the murders of Miguel and Manuel. Under police questioning, he revealed that whilst he was hiding in Rio de Janeiro, 3 other criminals approached him with a job. They took a taxi to the Spiritualist Centre in Niterói, where they met with the proprietor of the place, a woman called Helena. She introduced the group to Miguel and Manuel, who she already knew had plenty of cash on them. After attending a séance at the Spiritualist Centre, Benzani was instructed to drive Helena, Miguel, Manuel and the 3 other criminals to the foot of Morro de Vintom. There, they forced Miguel and Manuel to get out of the car and go with them onto the hillside, while Benzani stayed with the car. Half an hour later, Helena and the 3 men returned with a briefcase containing the money. They told Benzani that they had forced the victims to take poison at gunpoint. So for once we've got an official conclusion from whatever paper this was, which may or may not have got the conclusion from the police. We're not really sure, because I got it from a UFO magazine in 1969, which was translated from Portuguese to English.
Oh.
But nonetheless, despite all those bad things I said, it could be true, right? This could have been what happened.
No,
It's pretty hard for us to argue against it, given
Genuinely, it could be true. It would make more sense.
Okay, let's break it down. It doesn't explain the lead masks. It doesn't explain the palm tree leaf bed they've made.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Maybe the palm trees were poisoned.
What? And they licked the palm tree.
Well, no,
leaves.
they would lay on it.
Yeah,
How
but they
would
had
the poison get
raincoats.
into them? Yeah, raincoats stop palm tree poison, don't you know?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forgot that bit.
Well, they're literally
That's their
waterproof,
main
so-
purpose. Why else would you have a raincoat? Yeah, so what do you think about that? I mean, some bits it explains, some bits it doesn't explain. It's pretty down to earth as a murder mugging sort of thing, where they've scoped out the targets already. They know they've got money on them.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently isn't a lot of money, but it's worth killing them over.
But the thing that doesn't make sense is that if you're going to mug somebody, why don't you just shoot them?
Because poison is cooler.
Poison looks like a suicide.
Yeah, but
And then they could have
chances...
literally just wrote on a notepad the instructions.
Yeah, it doesn't explain the notepad instructions either.
No, but it would make sense that they wrote not a suicide note, but just like...
Something to throw off the set.
So they crafted some sort of weird ritual for the week beforehand to hide the murder.
I don't know. It makes more sense that they were murdered like that to have money stolen, but it still doesn't. It doesn't feel right. Nothing lines up.
So the thing...
It seems fishy. It seems covered up to me.
The weird thing
Putting
about
my conspiracy
it
hat on.
that... So there's a couple of things that strike me, first of all. So it's quite elaborate in the first place. I wonder whether or not these are actually two blokes getting on with their own thing, had done this loads and loads of times, never had any problems, and just so happened to be mugged the time that they were doing it and died. And that's why everyone's like, oh god, the goggles, it must be the goggles in the palm tree. But actually, they'd done this every week for the last 2 years and never batted an eyelid about it. And then it just so happens to be that they were mugged on that day. The weird thing about it for me is that if it's in the middle of a rainstorm, okay, yeah, if you shoot somebody, it's evidence that there was a murder, you're going to get investigated, so it hides your crime. But why would you drive them all the way out to the middle of nowhere to poison them? Just poison them in their house. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to mug them, take all their money. Don't leave one guy with 175,000 Cruzeiro in his pocket.
I feel like a lot of like true crime and stuff, you get really good at, if you were going to murder someone, you would... you'd know how to do it because of what I'm
we're now experts in
moving them away from, moving them out into the middle of nowhere. Depending on the poison that they give them, they might have had time to call for help if they were just in the city or whatever.
Maybe.
Well, that's presuming that you just got them to take the poison and then left them.
Yeah, but it's setting up the weird scene afterwards.
Yeah,
that's the strange bit.
Doesn't sound right.
It's got to be aliens, right?
I'm not now. It's not aliens.
I mean, she was a notable society woman. You can't argue with her sighting. She'll sue you. She's got political power.
I'm still going with like theory one, that it's all just one big cult, but also the.
I think the fact that it's misadventure rather than
misadventure than intentional, but also the other one that happened in 1962. Like that, it's just it all leads to being the same group, the same intentions. I am agreeing with what Stu said. I reckon like they might have had other things where it's not killed them, but actually no. That's okay. If they were taking the same drugs or the same whatever, that's more likely that they both would have died. But for them both to have died,
so if
it was misadventure,
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm wondering whether or not this is one of the... They might have been trialling different substances to see whether or not they could get one to work. and they go to the same spot every time and they see if it works. But each time they've been fine and it hasn't worked. So they've come up with a new strategy. So they've written it out and said, this is a record of what we're going to do to see if it worked so that we can distribute that method to the other cult members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're scientists, aren't they? They're
it's trial and error.
They're changing the factors in the experiment to try and reproduce the result, right?
They are scientists.
They are scientists.
Mm.
They're scientific spiritualists.
It might words escape me again.
Words.
The last thing you said about some guy admitting to the murder, blah, 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 building up the story, that could be how it's been reported, and the fact that there's information missing might just be that there's information missing, and it might have been genuinely the real thing, you know? And I'm not, but the reason I'm not agreeing with it isn't because I want it to be something wackier, you know what I mean?
You do, though, don't you?
Well, no, you do.
You do
bit,
want,
but I'm not. If that felt like the correct answer, I'd be agreeing with it. But there's still information all over the place and that's obviously why it's still a mystery that people can't put their finger on it.
Yeah, of course. It's an unsolved death. I mean, that was
really bizarre.
The lead mask chase of Brazil. It's very cool, and I had a fun time putting this together.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and obviously it's sparked loads of debate.
Like, I genuinely think between me and you, Stuart, there's been a couple of times this episode where we both actually not got heated, but had like genuine, serious back and two. Where we'll actually know.
Yeah, just challenging the different like plot holes, basically.
Yeah.
I take it that's all the theories, Al.
That's everything I've got.
Yeah, so it's hard to, obviously, because we've back and forthed it so much over it. It's hard to think of any other explanation. It does just sound like trial and error with a bit of misadventure this time, to me. And it's something that it just happens to be their personal beliefs, that they happen to be part of a group of people who think similar, call it a cult, call it a religion, call it a collection of people all thinking the same thing, whatever. But they all quite clearly have the intent to communicate with spirits of some way. And it sounds like it is just a trial and error, but this time it's not worked.
Yeah, and that I completely agree with that.
I agree.
I do think maybe it could be some sort of suicide thing, because, like you said before, if one of them dies accidentally, the other one would try and get help.
Yes.
So, like, that makes it more likely that it was some sort of suicide, but
also...
But the motive's not there.
If there was some kind of drug that knocked them both out before they died, then they wouldn't have had time to react.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
It could be, yeah.
So it was either intentional or a complete accident where they both died at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with what you're saying. But then one of the things that making me not believe that it was the murder case at the end is that they were seen to be nervous first. Maybe they were nervous about the experiment or something else, but why would they be nervous about getting mugged that they didn't know was going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it maybe just being out on the road, maybe there's loads of reasons that someone could look nervous, but I feel like it's more lined up to being nervous about an experiment or a new thing.
Yeah. Or even, just being caught with illicit substances. Probably still a crime.
Or that, yeah. Depending on the substance that they took. But you're right, I've not even really considered that it was actually drugs.
I'm picturing some sort of LSD laced with meth. It's got to be some strong stuff to reveal the third eye, right?
Yeah.
The big thing to me is the autopsy.
Oh, the autopsy's a joke. Like, you can't.
We need more from the autopsy. Like,
yeah.
You look back at the death of Elisa Lam and the Marilyn Monroe one that was recent as well. Like, we had really good, detailed autopsies.
Yeah, but the Marilyn Monroe one, she's a rich, famous person. And
yeah, there's
Elisa
something
Lam
to be gained,
was really
isn't there?
recent, so...
True, but like...
Yeah, the question is how much resources are you going to invest in finding two people dead who don't look like there's any signs of foul play? What's there to be gained from a really expensive public inquiry?
Because then we would be able to solve the mystery. Why can't people understand?
Well, that's true, but it wouldn't. I suppose the point of it, though, is
we've got to do a good job for the podcast in 2020.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so shameful, isn't it? They don't never think about the podcasters in the future.
But at least we have something to talk about.
At least we have something to talk about.
I will say that it is not often we all three of us agree on the same, like categorically on the same.
No, it's not.
No. And for that, I'm going to disagree with everything that you've just said.
Yes.
You're wrong.
It's aliens.
It was UFOs. Prove me wrong.
Ramblings of a Madman is currently available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are available on Twitter at Roan Podcast, that's ROAN Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!